You know those absolutely stunning gardens you see? The ones with rolling waves of flowers that somehow magically bloom in perfect sequence, literally from early spring all the way through late summer? It's like a giant puzzle. You might think, oh, they must have a massive landscaping team to pull that off, but no. The secret is actually hidden underground. It all comes down to planting bulbs and doing it with exact precision. If you want a garden that blooms continuously, you need to know exactly how to plant them. So today, we're putting together the ultimate explainer, teaching you the exact, foolproof recipe for planting bulbs successfully.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of today's masterclass kind of like baking, right? If you use the right ingredients, follow the proper sequence, and really understand the science of your oven, or, in this case, your soil, you are guaranteed a spectacular result. We're going to frame this whole process as a step-by-step recipe for gardening success, giving you everything you need to create a show-stopping floral display. So here's our game plan. We'll start with timing your planting, then we'll move on to prepping your soil and space. After that, we hit the golden rules of depth, figure out how to fend off those hungry garden pests, and finally, the really fun part, putting it all together by planting a spectacular bulb lasagna. Let's get to it. Step 1, timing your planting and exactly when to get digging.
Okay, getting this right is absolutely critical. You can't just, throw these in the ground whenever you have a free weekend. There are fundamental differences here. Take your fall planted bulbs. These are your classic spring bloomers, things like tulips, daffodils, crocuses. Because they're hardy, they actually need a long period of winter cold, usually about 12 to 16 weeks in the dark, just to root properly and break dormancy. You've got to get these in the ground 6 to 8 weeks before the ground freezes. Then, on the flip side, you have spring-planted bulbs. These are your summer stunners, dahlias, canna lilies, gladiolus. Now, these bulbs are tender. If they freeze, they rot. End of story. So you have to wait to plant them until after the very last frost date in your area.
Now, for those fall-planted bulbs, 55 degrees Fahrenheit is the magic number. You literally must wait until your soil temperature drops to 55 degrees or below before you plant. Why? Well, planting when the soil is too warm is actually the #1 cause of stunted blooms come springtime. You want the soil cool enough to kickstart bot root development before winter sets in, but obviously not so cold that the ground is completely frozen solid.
Moving on to step 2, prepping soil and space. This is the absolute foundation of your recipe. So what do bulbs actually need to thrive? First and foremost, well-drained, sandy loam soil. The crucial point here is that you absolutely must avoid what gardeners call wet feet. If water pools in your planting bed, your bulbs are gonna rot, plain and simple. You're aiming for a pH right around 6 to 7. Now, if you're dealing with really heavy clay, you'll want to dig down and loosen that soil to about 10 inches deep. Mix in some organic matter, like compost, leaf mold, or peat, just to lighten the whole thing up. Oh, and to give them a really great head start, mix a phosphorus-rich fertilizer, like bone meal, straight into the soil. It works wonders for robust root growth.
All right, step 3, the golden rules of depth and getting the mechanics exactly right.
This brilliantly illustrates exactly how deep different species need to go. There's a huge variety here. You have your hardy bulbs that can tough it out all winter, and tender ones that need to be dug up or planted in the spring. Just to put it in perspective, little guys like Siberian squill and crocus only need to go down about 2 to 4 inches. But your massive bulbs, think the giant onion or the crown imperial, those need to be planted deeply. We're talking up to 8 inches down. But hey, if you don't have a chart handy, it all boils down to one super easy to remember rule of thumb. Plant bulbs at a depth of 2.5 to 3 times their height. That's it. If you plant a bulb too shallow, it just won't root properly. You'll end up with an uneven, spindly plant that might literally flop over. But, and this is important, if you plant it too deep, it exhausts all of its energy just trying to reach the surface, which leads to rotting or a super late emergence. So measure the bulb, multiply by 3, and boom, that's your digging depth.
Which brings us to step 4, fending off garden pests and defending your blooms.
Listen, if you live in an area with a lot of hungry critters, certain natural defenses are going to be your best friend. Instead of going to war with nature, just plant bulbs that animals naturally avoid anyway. Daffodils, for example, practically invincible. They're toxic and totally unpalatable to deer above ground, and entirely gopher, mole, and vole-proof underground. So, sorry squirrels. Hyacinths are also toxic to critters. Meanwhile, alliums, which are basically ornamental onions, and Spanish bluebells, they contain compounds that just taste awful to deer. So strategically layering these deer-resistant varieties in your garden basically guarantees your hard work actually gets to bloom. And finally, step 5, planting a bulb lasagna, the ultimate showstopper dish. Now for the grand finale. We're taking all these basics we've just covered and applying them to the absolute best technique for creating continuous, overlapping blooms in a single container. Before we assemble, we need our mise en place. For a proper bulb lasagna, you're going to need a large, deep pot with plenty of drainage holes. Because this pot is going to sit outside all winter, you absolutely must have a bottom layer of gravel or expanded clay pebbles, often called leca, just to prevent waterlogging. Then grab your outdoor potting soil. Finally, you need 3 categories of bulbs: your large, late-blooming bulbs like hyacinths, your mid-size, mid-blooming bulbs like tulips or daffodils, and your small, early-blooming bulbs like bluebells or crocus.
Okay, here's the exact layering process. First up, add a thick base of compost right over your gravel, and then plant those large, late-blooming hyacinths. Cover them up with a few inches of compost. Next, go ahead and plant your mid-blooming daffodils or tulips, and cover those with compost. Then place your tiny, early-blooming bluebells or crocuses right near the top. Finally, top the whole thing off with one last layer of compost. Now, what's really interesting here is you might think, wait, planting bulbs directly on top of each other, won't that block them? But it doesn't. As the bottom bulbs sprout, their shoots naturally just sort of veer off course and grow right around the bulbs placed above them without being stunted at all. It is such an incredibly efficient use of space.
To finish baking our lasagna, there are a few final, absolutely critical steps. You have to water the pot thoroughly, like immediately after planting. Your bulbs have been in dry storage, right? So that water breaks their dry spell and jumpstarts that crucial root growth. Next, add a nice thick layer of mulch or dry leaves over the top of the soil for insulation. You'll want to place your pot outdoors in a sheltered location, maybe tucked against the wall, just to protect it from extreme wind. Oh, and if you live in an area that gets heavy winter rain, do yourself a favor and elevate the pot on a couple of bricks so those drainage holes stay completely clear.
And there you go, a highly structured, totally foolproof recipe for successfully planting bulbs. From mastering soil temps and depth, to naturally outsmarting deer, to layering a stunning bulb lasagna right in a container. By following these steps, you are pretty much guaranteeing yourself a vibrant, rolling wave of color the minute the weather warms up. So the only question left for you is, what's going to be the first layer in your spring bulb recipe? Grab a trowel, pick out your favorite varieties, and start digging today.